Today, and with the first pick, we're talking the best games, standout performances, and biggest storylines from Week 8 of the NFL season. JJ, please, good sir, will you tell them what time it is?
I would, but I always wonder why you never ask Ram. But it is Ran It Back Monday.
Thank you. It is Ran It Back Monday. It would be peculiar, but not altogether out of the realm of possibility to ask Rand about himself because he loves talking about himself, usually in third person. I'm Ryan Wilson.
Whoa.
That's former Titans GM Rand Carthon making that face. And, of course, that's our CBS Sports NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. All right, guys, we're already 2 months through the season, and the Packers might be the best team in football. Jets might be the worst team in football, but they're not winless. And running back, God's position, Rand, is a legit MVP candidate, and we'll talk about that. But first, let's start in Pittsburgh. And JJ, I want to come to you because you wrote about this last week. Jordan Love out Aaron Rodgers to Aaron Rodgers, and now the Packers are 5-1-1, best record in the NFC. But, and this is what you wrote about, the scuttlebutt is that soon-to-be 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers might be interested in playing in 2026, and I would imagine that the Steelers would love to run it back with him. What do you know about that?
Yeah, I believe so. You go back to the summer, and he did not rule out this being his last year. He said, yeah, I think it is, right? But he didn't shut the door on it. And I don't know any former Packers and Jets quarterback who would toy around with retirement and say that they're done and then not be done. But he did not completely close the door, right? And so now you start playing the way that he's been playing, right? I mean, Aaron Rodgers didn't lose that game last night by any stretch. And you have to wonder if this is going to be something where he comes back next year. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers would love to have him back. You look at this draft class, you guys know it well. Is this a draft class that the Steelers think that they're going to go out and get their next Ben Roethlisberger in the draft? Probably not. Do they like Will Howard? Sure. Do they want him to be their week 1 starter next year? Probably not. So all of those things are very possible, but I say all that in the same breath as it was a little bit later in the year where we thought, oh boy, Russell Wilson, they might re-sign Russell Wilson. And by the end of the season, they didn't want anything to do with Russell Wilson, right? So I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case with Aaron Rodgers, but it being a third of the way through what they hope to be their season, who knows exactly how it's going to go once they get to February and March.
Hey, Rand, let me ask you this from the GM perspective, because a couple things. You mentioned Big Ben, JJ. He was drafted in 04. Rodgers was drafted in 05, somehow still playing. But the other thing is this. Are you having meetings, Rand, with your higher-ups, the pro side and the draft side, about the landscape of the QB class, and also at this point in the middle, late October, hey, we want to bring back this soon-to-be 42-year-old because we think we can build around him? Is that better use of your resources? Like, what are the conversations at this point when you're thinking about bringing back a guy that maybe you thought was only going to be there for a year?
Yeah, I think if you're Omar Khan, you're already looking at quarterbacks for next year in terms of the draft class and what they bring. And we talked about it, or JJ talked about it. This draft class, it may not have a quote-unquote star, right, that everyone can hang their hat on and say, hey, this guy's Joe Burrow. He is the bona fide number 1 pick. Lige and I, we've been going back and forth this morning on guys he likes more than this guy. I think it's clear if you watch this show who I like the most in terms of this draft class. I will say this. Them bringing Aaron Rodgers back, that conversation has been had. And I know, like JJ said, we got to play out the rest of the year and see what that brings, see how that goes. But I do think there's a scenario in which you bring back Aaron Rodgers, what that number is, and what it costs you, that remains to be seen. But I also think there's also the scenario you bring him back and you still draft a quarterback relatively high and allow that person to sit for a year and then transition. I know, Ryan, you're smirk. I'm not buying into the Will Howard thing being the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward. I think their eventual starter is going to be in the 2026 draft class.
I was partially smirking because of that, but also because Aaron Rodgers is going to be like, you know what? I saw this movie when they drafted Jordan Love, and I was super bummed out about that. But at 42, that's a different conversation. And it appears that Aaron Rodgers likes Pittsburgh and his teammates and Mike Tomlin. And I'll ask you one more thing, Rand, before we move on. Are you basically saying we're all in on trying to make a legit run or just win a playoff game, which they haven't done in a while? Because this team is pretty old. And if you pass on a quarterback that you like, whoever that may be, and roll with Aaron Rodgers for one more year to get a wide receiver or whatever, what is the expectation of how 2026 plays out? Like, how far are you getting into January football?
Well, I think if you have Aaron Rodgers as your starting quarterback for another year, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think you're pretty much hedging your bet that you're going to play in the tournament in January, right? And you're giving it, and we all know all you need is a legitimate shot to be in the tournament. If my memory serves me correct, when Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl, I think that was in 2010, they were the 6th seed that year. And so they just barely got into the tournament. They got into the tournament, obviously ran the table and won the Super Bowl. So you just want the opportunity to get into the tournament. And I think if you're looking at it, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, who under Mike Tomlin have never had a losing season, you're looking at it as who gives us the best chance to get in the tournament? Is that going to be a rookie quarterback or is that going to be Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, and Steelers fans are angry because this team hasn't won a playoff game in forever. And JJ, I guess I'll ask you this way, based on your thoughts personally, then people maybe you've talked to, does Aaron have enough to keep this going? I mean, obviously he's an upgrade over Kenny Pickett, and that's not even a conversation. But is he an upgrade over whatever rookie quarterback you might draft and develop?
Yeah, I think so. I think also we probably need to recalibrate what we think about Achilles injuries, right? Like they sort of have been, we've always said like, 8, 10-ish months, a year, right? But we've seen with Kirk Cousins, who has looked like a shell of himself really outside of a couple games against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year, I think, that he never really got right from the Achilles. And, Rodgers had that procedure, the speed bridge that really hadn't been done before. We hadn't seen a professional athlete, certainly no one at his age and at his position. And it took him some time. Now he looks like a very young 41. He looks like what we were thinking the next, 40-plus-year-old quarterback could be, as Tom Brady was doing what he was doing several years ago, right? So it seems that he has fully recovered from that, but it took longer than what our minds sort of were calibrated toward. Maybe because like a Terrell Suggs came back incredibly early and a Cam Akers came back in 5.5 months, right? Those are the exceptions. So there's that. And then he's throwing the football 70 yards in the air in primetime football a couple weeks ago, right? So the arm's still there, the mobility's there, but if you have a 40-plus-year-old quarterback, you have to have an offensive line and you have to have weapons out there and you have to have a run game. So that's going to be true wherever Aaron Rodgers goes, and frankly, wherever any player of any sort of mobility goes. So I think that he certainly has a 2026 in him. You don't want to see him fall off a cliff this season, right? You don't want him to have a December like Russell Wilson had last year. That'll change everything. But as long as he remains on this trajectory, or even he stays linear, right? I don't see why you wouldn't want to have him back in 26.
Yeah, and you make a lot of good points. And we'll talk later in the show about some more latest rumblings with the trade deadline. But the Steelers could use a wide receiver. You're talking about playmakers. And the defense didn't play very well last night either. We didn't try to give the Packers short shrift here. They're one of the best teams in football. Before we go to a break, Rand, I'll just ask you, is this the best team in football? And the team atop the this is so funny. The team atop the AFC, your Indianapolis Colts. If the Colts play the Packers in the Super Bowl, who's winning that game?
If the Colts play just one game to get it done, I'll probably say Green Bay right now.
Oh, come on, man!
And the reason why I say that is because again, you give Matt LaFleur, an opportunity 2 weeks to scheme up a plan because it'll be total scheme, and I just worry about the defense of Indianapolis and the secondary and how they'll hold up if they're spread out, and you have a Josh Jacobs in the backfield, right, which makes it a balanced offense and have the ability to hit explosives. And you got the tight end and Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave and those guys. So I would just say one game going at it, I would just say Green Bay right now.
Jonathan Taylor plays for the Colts.
Yeah, and the MVP, Jonathan Taylor, but I'll let us get to break before I start going there.
And you owe Jalen Squirts an apology, so I'll let you do that when we get later in the show. So disrespectfful. That's what you call Jalen. That's what you call Daniel Jones in week 2, if I recall correctly.
No, I didn't know. I did not say that word you said, but
JJ,
let's just get the break. Let's get to break.
I'd love to get to break.
Yes, let's get to break.
All right, let's go to break, and then we will prove Rand wrong when we get back. All right, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I don't know if we can outdo that last segment, but let's try. Let's try together and see what we can do. JJ shakes his head. Rand laughs at me. We are all systems go. All right, producer Sharon, let's celebrate something good that's never happened before in 2025. The Jets won a football game. What do you got for
let me
us?
hear it. Jets, Jets. Big dubs over here, man. Let's get it, man. Appreciate y'all, bro. Stay down, man. We coming back out the bye week, and it's full throttle. Man, let's do it. Jets win. We back on the board, baby. Big dub. Jets. Jets. Let's go.
First dub. It won't be the last one, man. All glory be unto Jesus. Thank you, God. Let's do it, man. Jets Nation, we coming home with a dub. Let's go.
Jets fans, what's going on? Tyler Johnson here, baby. Big dubs. Let's go, baby.
National Tight Ends Day. Game winning touchdown for the rookie. Back in Ohio. Let's go.
Hey, man, let me hear it. Jay.
All right, Rand, first win of the season. You do your IG live there. Let them know what's up. First win, not the last win. Do you agree with that? And how important is this for a first-year coach in Aaron Glenn to get this win? It didn't seem like Woody Johnson was going to fire him, none of that stuff, but just the pressure of being in that media market and all that comes with it.
No, honestly, man, it's a big deal for a first-time head coach to get that first win, especially with everything that Aaron Glenn has had to deal with. You know, the last couple of weeks, everyone has been trying to get him fired in terms of the conversation of one and done. You had to talk about the mismanagement of the clock and situational football and all these different things. And, you know, the only way that you can build up and create any type of momentum for your football team is you got to be able to get one win. And that's what this was for them. They got their one win when nobody picked them to win this football game. And especially coming off the week that they had as a team, you know, as Justin Fields, the week he had to go through. And even speaking of Justin Fields, like, I appreciate his vulnerability that he led with last night, because that's not an easy thing to do, and especially share with that New York media market. And he was vulnerable enough to do that. But it's a big deal, man. And you add in yesterday morning them losing an all-time great Jet in Nick Mangold to start the day. It was just a big win, not only for Aaron Glenn and his version of the Jets, but just the Jets organization as a whole.
Hey, JJ, you were shaking your head in the negative that it wasn't going to be a situation where Aaron Glenn would get fired this season. You can, if you have any follow-up on that, please add to it. And I don't know if you have any thoughts or heard anything about Justin Fields' journey the last few days, because I don't know if he would have started had Tyrod Taylor been healthy.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll get to that. Look, you never, I'm not an oracle, so I can't predict the future. And I certainly would never tell you what Woody Johnson 2 months from now will or will not do, right? That's a fool's errand. However, with Aaron Glenn being a former player, a beloved Jet, someone that they spent a lot of time and invested a lot of energy in figuring out that he was going to be their next head coach, short of this ending in disaster. And I mean, you got to talk about 0-17, non-competitive down the stretch sort of disaster. I didn't really see him being a one and done coach. Okay. And so I'm using the past tense, right? We still got half the season left. I don't see him being a one and done coach. As far as what Justin Fields said and his week, I was there right in front of Woody Johnson last week when he said what he said. And it's like, oh my gosh, he is saying this about an active player on his roster. And you start texting around, calling around, talking with folks, and you almost don't say that unless you know what's going to happen that week. You know that Justin Fields is not going to start. And maybe you didn't chat with the team doctors before you talked, and maybe, you know, Tyrod Taylor was supposed to be the starter this week, but injury forced Justin Fields to be the guy. You know, whatever it was, now you roll with Justin Fields this week. There's no, you know, question about it. And then lastly, I think the question that was posed about, is this going to actually be the only Jets win? Will they win again? They play, I would say, 3 of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL. They got the Browns on their roster, or excuse me, on their schedule. They have the Saints on their schedule. And, you know, they got the Dolphins on their schedule, along with an up and down Falcons team. So I'm not sitting here telling you that the Jets are going to the playoffs, but I don't think that they beat a Bengals team that last week. You would have said, well, they're not going to beat the Bengals. So why can't they beat 3 of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL on their schedule.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Rand, let me circle back and ask you about Justin Fields, because you mentioned how he talked about how he struggled with getting benched last week for the second half of that football game. And the 2 weeks prior to Sunday's game, he looked like he was not seeing anything well at all. It was some of the worst QB play I can remember watching. And it felt like, and I haven't talked to anyone about this, but it felt like they said, get to the top of your drop and throw the ball. Like, I don't care if you throw an interception, throw the ball on the intermediate routes. He started to do that. How does that even happen to an NFL quarterback who's been in the league 5 or 6 years? Like, how do you get to that point when they're struggling so much it feels like above the neck to do what at times are simple quarterback things?
Well, I think it starts with confidence in you having not only confidence in what you're doing, but confidence in the people that you have out there, right? And we can't say that they've always had people out there on the football field with Justin Fields that he would feel confident in, and probably vice versa. They may not feel confident in him as well. But so I think some of that plays into it. And then there becomes the part of how many people are actually in the ear of Justin Fields. And I'm not talking about his family and people outside of the building. How many is, and again, I don't know what their coaching structure is right now, but how much is it the offensive coordinator's talking to him about doing things one way? And then if there's a separate quarterback coach, is he talking to him? And then is the head coach getting involved? Is the head coach? And so this happens some in the NFL. You have too many people with access to the quarterback being able to talk to the quarterback. And I use my example of having a young rookie, Will Levis, right? And having, you had a quarterback coach, you had an offensive coordinator, you had a head coach who was very astute and aware. And so I know for myself as the GM, a person who wanted to breathe confidence into him, I stayed away from anything about, hey man, you need to get better in this area. I just gave encouraging words, hey man, you don't have to be number 1. You just need to be 1 of 11. Just be 1 of 11, do your job, and allow your guys around you to make plays, and that's what we need from you. I didn't try to overcomplicate things and try to be in his ear and talk about the technical parts of the game. So that could also be a part of it. And again, when you're on a losing team and you're pressing and you're knowing that your mistakes could cost the team, it will cost you to be gun shy. And a lot of times you see guys that they won't throw the ball until they know that the man is open and won't anticipate things that could happen.
Yeah, it felt like his game Sunday was the best game he's played this year. And the first game of the season against the Steelers, when he was throwing the ball down the field, was second best, and everything in between got us to the point where we're talking about Tyrod Taylor. All right, let's move to another team with 1 win that benched their quarterback on Sunday. The New Orleans Saints benched Spencer Rattler, and I don't even think it was necessarily anything that Spencer did. He's played average to above average on a pretty bad team. Spencer's my guy. Brought in Tyler Shough, the 40th overall pick. Let me have Spencer. Tyler Shough, the 40th overall pick out of Louisville last year. He got to see the field. Rand, I'm going to come back to you because as we sit here, the Saints have the 1st overall pick. What has to happen with Tyler Shough over the next 2 months for you to convince yourself, if you're Kellen Moore, that you don't need to use that 1st overall pick on a quarterback?
Well, I think honestly, I'll say it this way because I don't even know that it's Kellen Moore's decision. Right? It's what does Mickey Loomis need to see? Because if you're whether you're Mickey Loomis, Jeff Ireland, Michael Parrington, or any of those guys that are higher up, Kai Harley, in the organization from the front office standpoint, you take Tyler Shough in the 2nd round because you felt like that guy was a fit for Kellen Moore's system. Now, what I would need to see out of him is he's got to be able to take this offense to a level that Spencer Rattler couldn't or didn't. And because, like you said, and you know, I'm laughing tongue in cheek with you in terms of Spencer Rattler, but he's been up and down, but he's shown some things that I think made people say, well, you know, maybe this guy isn't so bad, right? And so I think it just got to a point yesterday, and it was going to get to this point anyway. At some point in this season, they needed to see what Tyler Shough is or is not, because that's going to influence the decision that's going to come next April. And so me personally, in order for this Saints offense to go where they need to go, obviously you got to be able to protect better, you got to be able to run the football, and you got to have those guys on the perimeter, the Rashid Shaheeds and Chris Olaves and Jawan Johnson. You got to have those guys available to you. But I just don't think that the quarterback for right now and the quarterback of the future is on this Saints roster. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I get it. I think you can't draft enough quarterbacks. Maybe it feels wasteful to take a quarterback at 40 and then take one in the first round the next year. Carolina Panthers took a quarterback in the second round, then took Cam Newton, and that worked out okay back in 2011. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back here, we're going to talk about God's position, Brand. Running back who has a chance in Jonathan Taylor to legitimately win the MVP for the first time for a running back since. I'll tell you when right after this break. All right, JJ, pop quiz hot shot. Can you tell me the last time an NFL MVP was not a quarterback?
Was it Adrian Peterson when he broke the 2,000-yard mark?
Okay, yeah, it was. Well done. 2012, Adrian Peterson was the last running back to do it. Did you know that, Rand? You had to know that. You're a running back. Okay. And since 2000, there have been 21 quarterbacks who won the award. 4 running backs only. Marshall Faulk in 2000, 05 was Sean Alexander, 06 was LaDainian Tomlinson, and then Adrian Peterson as the smartest man on planet Earth. JJ just told us about Rand.
See, my guess would have been LT. My guess was I was thinking I would say LT.
Yeah, in 06. And it's crazy now to think that back-to-back years, 05 and 06, 2 running backs won it. And of course, I'm leading up to our guy Jonathan Taylor, who was on pace to rush for 1,800 yards, to have 26 touchdowns, to have 440 receiving yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. Rand, is he going to be Jonathan Taylor if he keeps up that pace and gets those sort of numbers? Is he going to be the 2026 or 2025 season NFL MVP?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh, come on.
Because no, and we will show a graphic here in a little bit of the odds. And it's a quarterback award. That's what it is. Saquon ran for 2,000 last year and had a crazy season, capped off with a Super Bowl win, and he was just the offensive player of the year. That's just what it is. That's just what this award has become, and it's not necessarily a MVP, the most valuable player of the entire league. In my opinion, he should be number one. He is playing lights out, and you just talk about the importance of him to this football team. Like Daniel Jones, who should also be in the conversation, he is able to do what he's doing because of what Jonathan Taylor is doing. And so I just listen, it all works together. Shout out Chris Ballard and his staff, Ed Dodds, and the whole crew there in Indy for the work they've done, the way they retooled this roster at a time when they needed it. Because man, this guy he's playing lights out, and it's one of those situations when you know that Jonathan Taylor is getting the football, but there's nothing you can do about it because their offensive line is typically better than most defensive lines that they play against. And a person that as big as he is, as shifty and nimble as he is, but also explosively fast, all he needs is a crease. There were a ton of runs yesterday watching the game with Damian Harris where we're like, did you see that run he just made? Like this is the graphic I'm talking about. He is the only non-quarterback on that list. And so odds say that, when you're on a list of 12 people and you're the only one at your position, it's a tough chance that he's going to win it.
Hey, JJ, I don't know if you're a voter or if you're allowed to talk about your votes, but assuming you were a voter, would you have any hesitation for voting for someone like Jonathan Taylor? Should he put up the numbers that we're talking about?
So I am a voter. I will talk about it now as we get a little closer to the time. I think I'll probably, put that under wraps. But as it stands right now, I would not have a problem voting for Jonathan Taylor. If the season ended right now, in the top 3, right? Like, and I have not sat down and done what I typically do in December into January. So this is not off the dome, right? This is what it is. But like, you got to talk about a Patrick Mahomes, a Drake May, Matthew Stafford, and a Jordan Love with Josh Allen. I know that they've fallen off a little bit, right? That's why you got to get to 17 games. But Jonathan Taylor is absolutely in the mix. I do want to take care of one thing, which people will say, well, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor's on pace for 1,800 yards, but Saquon Barkley didn't even get a sniff at MVP when he rushed for more than 2,000 yards, right? And sat out that last game. This is a year-to-year award. And so let's say that more quarterbacks as a season goes along have the sort of weeks that a Josh Allen just had, right? If Patrick Mahomes kind of falls off, if Drake May starts, throwing a couple more picks, and Jonathan Taylor has a 14-3, 15-2 Indianapolis Colts team, first round bye, and there's no clear and obvious quarterback at that point, then yes, I think that Jonathan Taylor could then be a legitimate candidate for NFL MVP. But for the reasons that Rand mentioned and espoused, right, it has become a quarterback award, and it's almost like Offensive Player of the Year is the award to the best offensive player who's not a quarterback.
Hey, Saquon Barkley walked so Jonathan Taylor could run.
There you go.
So there it is. And JJ, just for my knowledge, because I don't understand how these things work in terms of the voting, is it that you get to name a first place, second place, third place, and then the points are tallied? Is that how it works?
Yeah, so you do a top five. Now we can do five, which is great because you remember like 7 or so years ago, everyone kept saying, well, Russell Wilson's never had an MVP vote. And then you actually like went through it, and there was no year, because it was only one vote for one player, there was no year that you would have voted for Russell Wilson over anyone, right? And so now you get these top fives, and Dak Prescott, for example, right? He's coming off a bad game, but the top five allows you, if you're having an MVP caliber year, but your team goes 9-8, Joe Burrow last year, you can give rightly Joe Burrow an MVP vote, but not really impact the true MVP voting.
Gotcha. All right, let's turn to his teammate, Daniel Jones, Indiana Jones, Daniel Dimes, whatever you want to call him. Rand, I'll start with you as the guy who has to pay the quarterbacks. March 7th, 2023, the Giants signed Daniel Jones to a 4-year, $160 million deal. I mentioned that because I would imagine on this next deal, and the Colts are reportedly interested in signing him to a multi-year deal, you're going to have to pay him more than $40 million. And then the question becomes, how much more are you going to pay him? Because Brock Purdy, you and I talked about that in the days leading up to his deal, got 53. And we weren't sure whether it's going to be north or south of 50. So, GM Rand Carthon, you want Daniel Jones back? How much are you going to have to pay him? Because I don't imagine he's going to play for a sweetheart hometown deal.
Well, yes, you absolutely want him back, and I think it's smart to try to get this deal done now. And I think we may have even talked about this on the earlier shows, just about the importance of getting this done so he can be rest assured, have his mind clear, and the message that it sends to the rest of the locker room that we take care of our guys and we're all in with Daniel Jones. Now, what does that cost? Well, you have to assume, we'll just say you have to assume that the franchise tag will be the floor. Right, because they have that option if they don't get him done to do that. So the franchise tag will be the floor. However, I will say this, because you mentioned the Brock Purdy deal. It's not going to touch the Brock Purdy deal, right? I don't think it's going to touch that deal because if you're Daniel Jones, you're looking, and you said he may not want to do a team-friendly deal, but this is the one place that has allowed you to be who you think you are or who we've come to expect you to be. Why would you kind of ruin that by trying to get this money and with the understanding of I need that guy in the backfield, I need these weapons that I have at receiver, and I need these guys up in front of me to be paid. And so I think personally, because he's smart, he's a Duke grad, no offense to UNC, I know they got smart people over there too, but I think that he is going to come in at a team-friendly deal that is market appropriate, right, where he's not crushing the market. It's market appropriate. However, I think he is going to allow his team to continue to surround him with talent. I don't think he's going to even flirt with that $50 million a year number.
It's funny you say that, and JJ, I'll put the question to you, but Sam Darnold's deal, leaving Minnesota for Seattle, 3 years, $100 million. So that's $33 million a year. Are we looking at something closer to that? And the follow-up would be Anthony Richardson's future. He's had a tough stretch sitting on the bench. He got hurt, had eye socket surgery, I suppose. So I don't know what his future is going to be in Indianapolis either.
Oh, you know what his future is going to be.
Correct. I don't know where he's going to be in his future NFL endeavors.
That's more than fair. Rand's right about the franchise tag being the floor, right? So I guess it's low 40s. I don't have that number right off the top of my head, but I would assume it's 41 to 43, somewhere in there, right, Rand? So typically you just do some quick math, and in terms of AAV, right, average annual value, Let's call it a 3-year deal that averages $43-45 million per year. And then you can, within the deal, work out the guarantees and whatnot that actually helps the team. I would say that while it makes sense for the Colts to lock Daniel Jones into a long-term contract right now. If Daniel Jones is all about chasing the bag, or his agency is all about chasing the bag, then it does not make sense. And also, it's interesting that you mentioned Sam Darnold, because at this time last year with the Minnesota Vikings, it looked like Sam Darnold could be we basically are talking about Sam Darnold right now, right?
Yeah.
And then he turned into a pumpkin the last 2 games of the season. And his value really took a hit. Because
So that's what the result of that contract was? Those last 2 games?
Right, because otherwise the Vikings could have used the franchise tag on him, right? Otherwise, that would have been the floor for him, that $40 million per year. But in the gotta have it games, he reverted back a little bit to Jets Sam Darnold. And so what you don't want to see as the Colts play meaningful football in December and they face the Texans in that defense, they get into the playoffs and they lose. And not just lose, but lose because of Daniel Jones, you are then going to regret that in October, November, you signed him to this deal you can't extricate yourself from.
Yep. No, I get it. I get it. So there's a lot to sort through. And that Sam, thank you for reminding me of the Sam Darnold thing, because the $33 million does sound low in retrospect, but in real time, I'm sure there were frustrations if you were the Vikings about how that season ended for them. All right, let's take another quick break here. And I'm reading the rundown. This is weird. Another Tush Push controversy. We'll talk about what happened in that Philadelphia Giants game right after this break. Hey, JJ, still 8 days away until the trade deadline, but you have some breaking news for us. What do you got?
Some breaking news. The first trade that we have had in about 19 days in the NFL. And it just happened between the Tennessee Titans and the Los Angeles Rams. The Titans are sending cornerback Rodgers McCreary to the LA Rams. They're also sending with him a 6th-round pick to get a 5th-round pick in 2026 in return. So Rodgers McCreary, the cornerback, the first trade in almost 3 weeks in the NFL, leaving the Titans, going to the Los Angeles Rams in a pick swap 5th and 6th.
Yeah, and this is actually a good trade for the Rams. Rodgers is a really good nickel corner. He's going to be able to fit in that defense really well, because the Rams have been playing Quentin Lake, who's been one of their safeties, have been playing him a lot as kind of a big nickel, and Rodgers will be able to come in and fill that role and be able to play in coverage, but he's also a really good run defender, run supporter, and tackler. So this is a good fit for him, and then the Titans can continue to stockpile their draft picks, which is what they're looking to do at this point, because this is the second player from their secondary, with the first being Jarvis Brownlee, who had been an outside corner / nickel, and now you have Rodgers McCreary, who had been the starting nickel. They've now shipped him off, which shows that they're building towards next year's draft.
Yeah, and 2 relatively youngish players. Brownlee's younger than McCreary, who's been in the league, I think, 4 years now.
Yeah,
but
this is Rodgers. I'm sorry, this is Rodgers, a former 2nd-round pick who's entering the final year of his deal. And so I guess the next hurdle for the Rams would be, let's see if something gets done with them long term, with Rodgers being their start nickel, or if this is just a piece that they felt they needed to end the season with.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've done smoke and mirrors a great job in that secondary with a lot of players. People may not know their names. Obviously, the front 7 helps. But thank you for that, JJ. With the first pick, NFL Insider. I just gave him that title, Rand. All right. Producer Sharon, if you may not know, is an Eagles fan, and I'm sure he will defend to the death this stupid Tush Push. JJ, I'm tired of talking about it, but Brian Daboll, who I think is reactive is a word I would use, was well within his rights to freak out with that terrible call in which it wasn't over the end zone. Here it is, a 4th down, and Jalen sticks his hands out. Kayvon Thibodeau takes it. Somehow it's blown dead. JJ, please explain to me, as I are with the first pick insider, why this makes sense.
Why what makes sense that this
why is this still a thing? Why did the owners refuse to change it? Is it going to change? I can't imagine we're going to live in a world where this is going to be a play that's illegal in the new year.
Yeah, I'll be quick here and just say, first of all, I think the fatigue, Ryan, that you just talked about, that you have with this, is going to hit NFL team owners, right? It just kept coming up and coming up last year. It barely survived the vote. You needed 24 votes. It got 22, and so it stayed for 2025. And eventually, they're just going to say, "I don't even care about the play. The play is not that important to our team, and I'm tired of talking about it. I want to make more money." That's what I want to talk about at these meetings. If I'm an NFL team owner, not about the stupid Philadelphia play that my team doesn't even run well. And so they're going to get tired of it. It is really, really hard to officiate. And if you hate the officials and you say that they're dumb and that they should be smarter to officiate and they should never blow a whistle. And if you are charitable to the officials, you say, what's going on that play? The other team who gets paid a whole lot of money to stop it can't possibly stop it. Everybody's all condensed in here. Maybe it's also hard to call. And when you have a play that is difficult to officiate, maybe you shouldn't have that play in. The last thing that I would say, and Rand and I talked about this morning, is that this is one of the few plays in the NFL that is literally outside of like the 5-yard line, literally designed to not score. Right? Outside of 2-minute situations, right, where you're trying to get out of bounds or get to a spot for a field goal, any play can more or less open up into a score. Jalen Hurts at the snap is horizontal to the ground, right? He will go down very soon. And so when that happens, the refs are ready to blow the play dead because they know what the end game is. They know what you are attempting to do. And that is why, and I know some people say they didn't even hear a whistle. I wasn't there. I don't know if a whistle was blown or not, but if it was, it shouldn't have been blown. But I understand why it was blown so early so that they don't make a pinata out of Jalen Hurts' body and head as he's trying to go forward. So that's what happened. I'm tired of talking about it. The NFL will be tired of talking about it very soon.
Yeah.
Hey, Rand, before you answer, let me just pose this question to you. If you're the Giants GM and you're sitting in your suite up there, how much stuff are you throwing around that suite because you just you saved a touchdown and didn't get the turnover?
Honestly, man, that wasn't my thing. I had enough people around that were going crazy about different things going on in the game. I try to stay here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I already have stuff going on the inside where I'm about to lose it, but I have to try to keep my cool. But I think JJ's point is an excellent point because up until this morning, I hadn't thought about it or looked at it that way from the standpoint of this is a play that's not designed for you to rip off an explosive, right? This play is designed for you to get 1 to 2 yards and that's it. Let's live to see another down. And I also think the quick whistle is because of it being a quarterback, right? And I think had it been a running back, we've seen it. The running back is held up. He's off his feet in a pile of people, right, which says that forward progress is stopped. But as long as people are pushing, they allow the play to continue to go until somebody's on the ground. And so I think because it was a quarterback, and I'm not defending anybody, because if that was a running back or a tight end that you've motioned and put in the backfield, take the snap, that ball's a fumble, it's going the other way, right? But I think because it was a quarterback, and the position he was in, head exposed, neck exposed, you already can't hit the quarterback in the head and neck area. It was quick whistle, let's protect the quarterback, keep it moving. But like both of you put it, I think they're at a point now with the league in terms of officiating this thing. They're not spending resources trying to figure out how we can officiate this better because it will not be in our game next year.
Okay, good. We can quit talking about it. Okay, let's take one more quick break here. When we come back, we'll get a few more thoughts from you guys on this trade deadline stuff. JJ wrote a story about it. We'll talk about that right after this break. All right, we're back with Dr. Giggles and our NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. Like last week, Jonathan, I'm going to throw some stuff out at you, and you tell me what the latest is trade deadline-wise. November 4th is, of course, the trade deadline. Wise man once wrote, perhaps the biggest contender for a receiver is not the Steelers, but instead the Broncos. What do you got on that?
So a lot of NFL sources believe the Broncos are in the market for a wide receiver. Sean Payton sort of poo-pooed the idea of them being active at the trade deadline. It very well may be, right? Rand knows quite well that there's a ton of rumor around the NFL, but a lot of teams seem to believe that the Broncos could make a move, and if they do, it would be at pass catcher. So let's also include a tight end in there as well. You got Courtland Sutton, 30 years old, can get out of his contract. You're feeling good about this team. Yes, you're winning closely, but you have Bo Nix on that rookie contract for at least another year. So maybe add some depth, maybe find wide receiver 2, whatever. That's just a team to keep an eye on, especially with how the ground game is going right now. They are solid right there at running back, but just keep an eye on pass catcher this next week.
An interesting team to watch, the Buffalo Bills. Why do you say that?
Rasul Douglas, they traded for him 2 years ago at the deadline. Last year, they traded for Amari Cooper at the deadline. The Bills are a team who, Brandon Beane, I think, has said on the record that they don't believe in championship windows. So long as they have Josh Allen, they are in a championship window. Somewhat hard to argue that, and all that's good, fine, and fair. But this is a team that has comp picks typically, so I could see them making a move potentially on the defensive side, if not for a wide receiver.
All right, I'm laughing because you wrote last week that the Carolina Panthers haven't been above 500 since before the pandemic. They are now below 500 because of the Andy Dalton Express. That said, you cannot rule out Carolina making a move before the deadline. What might they be interested in?
Yeah, couldn't rule it out. Also couldn't rule it in. Right. So they're trying to build something in Carolina. I think they want to build through the draft. And after they just got spanked by the Buffalo Bills, they could use any number of things. They just need to get Bryce Young healthy. We will see how ultimately they play this week if they get Bryce Young healthy. I don't think that any move that ultimately they make, if they make a move, will be determined until after Sunday.
And Rand talked about this at the top, that one of the issues, not issues, but if the Packers were facing the Colts in the Super Bowl, the Colts defense would be the concern. And you wrote last week, sources say the Colts have been looking for an edge rusher and secondary help.
That's right. So edge or corner, right? And so a lot of teams want edge rusher help. And what we have seen the last 3 weeks is nobody making a move because no one can agree to price on these edge rushers, as well as the fact that sellers don't know that they should be sellers. So now we're starting to get to that point. Wouldn't be surprised if once you see an edge rusher go somewhere, that more follow very quickly after, once the sort of market is set. Meanwhile, corner, they have Travarius Ward, second concussion in short amount of time, goes on injured reserve. They thought they had that position figured out. Again, if you're going to be at the top of the AFC, you need to make sure that you can stop the pass and affect the passer.
Hey, Rand, if you're Chris Ballard in Indianapolis, would you do a one-year rental for a Trey Henderson, for example? And if so, what's the price you think you have to pay for that?
That was the first person that came to mind, especially with Lou Anarumo coming over now as the defensive coordinator to Indy. That price right now, understand that you're going to have to pay him, is going to probably be a third-round pick, I would suppose. But would I say it's worth it? Hell yeah, I would say it's worth it, especially in this window that the Colts are in.
Yeah, third round almost seems like a bargain to me on a one-year rental on a team that's really stacked at this point. More important, Rand, before we get out of here, if you're the Colts, edge rush help or cornerback help?
Give me the edge rusher. Give me the edge rusher.
Okay.
Because, like B-Mac says, make it hot so we can squat. And if you got the right guys back there, you can get to the quarterback. That ball's coming out quick.
Yeah, B-Mac did say that. By the way, I bought a shirt from B-Mac's little store, and he was giving them out for free, I found out later, so he owes me $40. But that's a conversation for another time. That's it for us here with the first pick. Thanks, you guys who watch. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts with that QR code, and we will catch you guys for Big Young Fellow Wednesday on Wednesday. See you then.